The shadows of Chaukhandi. The graveyard where the dead never sleep. There are places in Pakistan where history feels alive. Places where ancient stones seem to remember the footsteps of people who disappeared centuries ago. And then there are places where history becomes something darker. Something that people refuse to talk about after sunset. On the outskirts of Karachi, beyond the noise of the city and the endless movement of traffic, lies an ancient cemetery unlike almost anywhere else in Pakistan. It is called Chaukhandi. From a distance, the place looks almost beautiful. Hundreds of sandstone tombs rise from the dry earth like small pyramids. Their surfaces are covered with intricate carvings, geometric patterns, jewelry, weapons, horses, and figures of warriors. Some of the tombs are believed to belong to warriors and members of old Balok and Sindhi families. Many date from the 17th and 18th centuries, while the broader Chaukhandi-style tradition is sometimes discussed in connection with an even earlier period. During daylight, the cemetery is a remarkable historical site. But when the sun disappears behind the horizon, Chaukhandi changes. The wind becomes strangely quiet. The shadows between the tombs grow longer. And according to local stories, that is when the graveyard belongs to the dead. The journey. It was almost midnight when four friends decided to visit Chaukhandi. They had heard the stories for years. Stories of figures moving between the tombs. Stories of voices coming from empty graves. Stories of strange lights appearing over the cemetery. And most disturbing of all, stories of people hearing someone calling their name when there was absolutely nobody around. The four friends laughed about it. They were young, confident, and convinced that every ghost story had a simple explanation. A strange noise was an animal. A shadow was a tree. A distant light was probably a vehicle. And a voice in the darkness. Probably someone playing a prank. They wanted proof. So they brought cameras, flashlights, extra batteries, and one old handheld audio recorder. Their plan was simple. Enter the cemetery. Record everything. Stay for 30 minutes. Then leave. They had no idea that the hardest part would not be entering Chaukhandi. It would be getting out. The first warning. Their car stopped several hundred meters from the main cluster of tombs. The road was almost completely empty. There were no tourists. No families. No other visitors. Only darkness. One of the friends looked toward the cemetery. The ancient tombs were barely visible under the moonlight. He smiled. That's it. Nobody answered. They stepped out of the car. The temperature seemed strangely different. The night air was warm, but the cemetery itself felt cold. Not slightly cold. Cold enough that one of them pulled his jacket tighter around himself. They started walking. Their shoes pressed against the dry ground. Crunch. 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 Every sound seemed unnaturally loud. Then one of them stopped. Did you hear that? The others turned around. Hear what? He pointed toward the tombs. I thought someone said something. They listened. Nothing. Only wind. He laughed nervously. Forget it. They continued. But somewhere behind them, something moved. None of them noticed. The tombs. As they approached the ancient graves, the camera lights revealed details that could not be seen from a distance. The sandstone was covered with extraordinary carvings. Some graves carried designs associated with warriors. Horsemen. Swords. Shields. Bows and arrows. Other tombs displayed carvings representing jewelry and ornaments. The official descriptions of Chaukhandi confirmed these distinctive designs, including warrior imagery and ornaments associated with female burials. For a few minutes, the four friends forgot about the ghost stories. They were fascinated. One of them moved closer to a tomb. He raised his camera. and took a photograph. Flash. The light briefly illuminated the entire area. For less than a second, something appeared at the far end of the cemetery. A person. Standing between two tombs. Tall. Completely motionless. The photographer lowered his camera. Guys. What? I think someone is here. The others turned. There was nobody. They searched the area with their flashlights. Nothing. One of them laughed. Probably a tree. But the photographer was staring at the screen. He zoomed in. The shape was still visible in the photograph. A human silhouette. Standing perfectly upright. But there was something wrong. There was no face. No clothing. No visible features. Just a black human-shaped shadow. The voice. They decided to continue. The audio recorder was still running. One of them held it toward the darkness. Okay, he whispered. If there's anyone here. He paused. Say something. Nothing happened. He smiled. See? Nothing. Then the recorder crackled. Everyone froze. A faint sound came through the speaker. At first, it sounded like static. Then, a whisper. One word. A name. The name of one of the four friends. He immediately looked at the others. Did you guys just say my name? No. Nobody had spoken. The recorder continued running. He played it again. Static. Then the whisper. His name. Again. This time, everyone heard it. They looked at one another. The smile disappeared from their faces. Someone is messing with us. Who? Nobody answered. Because they all knew the truth. There was nobody else in the cemetery. The second voice. They decided to leave. But when they turned around, they realized something. They couldn't see the car. The cemetery suddenly seemed much larger. They walked back in the direction they believed they had come from. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Still no road. Still no car. Still nothing except tombs. One of them pulled out his phone. No signal. Another checked his GPS. The location kept jumping. For a moment it showed them standing near the highway. Then the map placed them several kilometers away. Then the screen went black. The battery was completely dead. Guys. Nobody wanted to answer. They kept walking. Then they heard footsteps. Behind them. Slow footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4. They stopped. The footsteps stopped. They started walking again. The footsteps followed. Faster this time. One of them turned around and shouted. Who's there? Silence. Then a figure appeared between the tombs. It was standing about 50 meters away. A human silhouette. Motionless. Watching them. One friend raised his flashlight. The beam crossed the darkness. The figure disappeared. Not ran. Not moved. Simply disappeared. The woman in the dark. They were now terrified. They decided to split up for only a few seconds so they could search for the road. It was the worst decision they could have made. One of them walked between two rows of tombs. His flashlight flickered. He hit it against his hand. The light returned. Then he saw her. A woman. Standing beside one of the graves. She was wearing what appeared to be a long, pale dress. Her back was facing him. He froze. The The woman did not move. He took one step forward. Are you okay? Nothing. Another step. Then the woman slowly turned her head. But her body did not move. Only her head. The flashlight went out. He screamed. The others came running. When they reached him, he was standing alone. There was nobody there. What happened? He couldn't speak. He simply pointed toward the grave. They looked. Nothing. Only sandstone. Ancient carvings. And darkness. The lights. At around 1:30 in the morning, something strange happened. Lights began appearing across the cemetery. One. Then another. Then another. Small glowing points floating above the ground. They moved slowly between the tombs. The friends watched in silence. One of them whispered. What are those? Nobody knew. The lights seemed to drift toward them. Then suddenly, all of them disappeared. The cemetery became completely dark. And from somewhere behind them came a sound. A man's voice. Deep. Angry. Almost like someone shouting from inside the earth. The friends ran. They didn't care where they were going. They ran between the tombs. They stumbled over stones. They fell. They got back up. They kept running. Until one of them crashed into something. The car. They had somehow returned to the exact place where they had started. The doors were still locked. He pulled them open. Everyone jumped inside. The engine started immediately. They drove away without looking back. The recording. The next morning, they listened to the recordings. At first, there was nothing unusual. Wind. Footsteps. Their own voices. Then they reached the moment when the first whisper appeared. The audio became distorted. And underneath the whisper, there was another sound. A second voice. A voice none of them had heard that night. It was barely audible. But when they increased the volume, they heard something terrifying. The voice was saying, "You left one behind." They looked at one another. For friends had entered the cemetery. For friends had returned. They counted themselves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Everyone was there. They laughed nervously. Bad audio. Probably interference. Nothing supernatural. Then one of them noticed something. The video camera had recorded the entire journey. He opened the final video. The four friends were running toward the car. He paused the footage. Behind them, between the tombs, stood a fifth figure. Tall. Dark. Motionless. Watching them. He advanced frame by frame. The figure was closer. 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 Then, in the final frame before they reached the car, the figure was standing directly behind them. Only a few meters away. The fifth shadow. They assumed the recording was some kind of optical illusion. Until 3 days later. One of the friends received a message from an unknown number. There was no text. Only a photograph. He opened it. It was a picture of Chaukhandi. Taken at night. The same cemetery. The same tombs. And standing between them was the same shadow. He immediately called the others. Did you send this? No. Then who did? Nobody knew. Another message arrived. This time there were words. 4 words. You forgot my grave. He stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. Come back. He deleted both messages. But that night, he woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. There was someone standing outside his bedroom window. He couldn't see the face. Only the silhouette. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the figure was gone. But on the window glass, there were 4 words written in the dust. You came before. What is really there? The Chaukhandi Tombs are not simply an abandoned collection of graves. They are a protected archaeological site of extraordinary historical importance. The tombs stretch across a large area and contain elaborate sandstone funerary architecture associated with old warrior and family burial traditions. Pakistan's heritage authorities describe the site as protected under antiquities legislation. The cemetery has also been on Pakistan's UNESCO tentative list since 1993. But history does not explain everything people claim to experience there. Over the years, Chaukhandi has developed a reputation for being haunted. Stories speak of shadowy figures, unexplained voices, strange lights, and apparitions appearing among the ancient tombs. Some travel accounts specifically warn visitors against entering the cemetery at night. Whether those experiences are supernatural or simply the result of darkness, isolation, fear, and an ancient cemetery surrounded by thousands of years of human stories, remains impossible to prove. But perhaps that is what makes Chaukhandi so frightening. Because sometimes, you don't need to know whether a ghost is real. You only need to wonder. What if it is? The final story. There is one final story that locals sometimes tell. They say that if you stand among the tombs after midnight and listen carefully, you may hear footsteps approaching from behind. Don't turn around. Because the old warning says that whatever is walking toward you doesn't always want to be seen. And if you hear someone whisper your name, don't answer. Because according to the legend, the first response tells the spirit that you can hear it. The second tells it that you are afraid. And the third tells it that you are willing to follow. Perhaps none of this is true. Perhaps every shadow has an explanation. Perhaps every strange sound is simply the wind moving through an ancient cemetery. Perhaps every mysterious light is nothing more than a distant vehicle. But there is one thing that is certainly true. Chaukhandi is a centuries-old burial ground. Its sandstone tombs have survived generations. Its carvings have survived wars, weather, neglect, and time. And beneath those stones lie the remains of people whose names have almost disappeared from history. So if you ever find yourself driving along the Karachi, Fatah Road, and you see those strange pyramid-shaped tombs rising from the darkness, remember the story. Don't stop simply because curiosity tells you to. Don't wander among the graves after sunset. And if you hear footsteps behind you, keep walking. Because maybe, just maybe, the footsteps aren't yours. And maybe the person walking behind you has been waiting there for centuries. Waiting for someone to come back. Waiting for someone to remember. Waiting for someone to answer. And at Chaukhandi, the dead may have all the time in the world. The question is, do you?